Hello there, my name is Christina Halstead, and this is a tutorial for Toon Boom Harmony Essentials. This is following up my tutorials on how to build a character and a little bit about the tools that you would use to do so. And as you can see, I've advanced ahead where I actually have a character, and he is all in his little pieces right now. So you can see I have N and F. I'm using that as near and far. Sometimes if you have a character that's symmetrical, like this one would be, you can use N and F like as near and far instead of right and left, because if you were to, let's say, 180 the character or just flip it horizontally, suddenly right is left and left is right, and then your naming conventions can get a little messed up. So in this case, he's symmetrical, so near and far work fine for me. In this case, near is on the right side and far is on the left side. So as you can see, I've got all these little pieces. And what I'm about to do now is start putting them into little peg groups. Peg, which you can find right here, is basically like a null layer. It just acts as a layer that you can transform and move around without actually affecting the art layer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select a bunch of things by holding Shift and just tapping from the highest point to the lowest point. I'm going to hit Control P, which pegs all of these pieces right here. Sometimes you don't need to peg everything. I like to peg. I like to have every piece have its own peg, because that way I can keep track of what I do to that piece without actually hurting the art layer. So in this case, I'm going to use these little white arrows to shrink these down. And you can actually manually put things in a peg too. So let me go ahead and add a peg. And it's going to actually add that peg to the layer I had selected. In this case, it was the near pupil. I'm going to go ahead and rename that as head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the rest of these. And I'm going to drag them to the head layer and pop them in. That actually put the pupil layer at the bottom. Let's go ahead and put that back up here. And so now, when I select the head peg, the new head peg, which I use in caps so I know it's like kind of the over peg, you can see that it actually selects all the little pieces that are inside. And if I were to actually move this, they all move together, separate from the neck. And actually, you may have just seen something interesting. This pink layer, which is I just selected the cheek. This pink layer means I'm actually selecting the art layer, and I would be preferred to have the yellow selection coloration, which means I selected a peg. And a way to do that, to make sure you always select the peg and not the art layer, is this little symbol right here, which basically says don't pick, if this has a peg, don't pick the art layer. So if I select that, and I select this, you can now see that that cheek is turned yellow. And if I go ahead and hit this, you can see everything's still selected. Another thing you can do when it comes to assembling a character is you can actually put pieces and attach them to other pieces. So let's go ahead and I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's go ahead and take this arm area right here, and I'm going to put pegs on all of these by hitting Control P after selecting them. So now they all have their own little peg. And then I'm going to do one more peg. And by double clicking that peg, I can rename it. Oops. I can rename that Arm P. Actually, that should be Arm NP. There we go. And I can select these two guys and get them in. Oops. Get them in with it. There we go. I'm going to put this here. So now you can see they're all within the arm peg. So if I select the arm peg, it selects all of them. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reset its rotational point, basically its center point, by using the rotate tool up here, which permanently resets where the peg center goes, or at least where the point of rotation goes. And then I'll go back to the transform tool here. You can see that now it's rotating right there instead of where it was. If you ever want to move the peg around without actually permanently changing, you can see the phantom peg right there where it's supposed to belong. You can temporarily move a peg by dragging it when the little P shows up with the transform tool sign, and you can actually change where the rotation starts. It also affects things like squash and stretch. If I move this up here, you can see now it's changing to follow the peg. If I select off and select it again, it's back at its original point that I just created using the rotation tool. So that is basically how you can assemble the pieces, and as you could probably figure, you can go deeper and deeper into a character's build and just start attaching pieces to pieces, so eventually you would have, see, the foot attached to the leg attached to the body, and same thing with the tail, same thing with the face, and then so the head would be attached to the neck would be attached to the body. And you can basically, in the end, have one whole peg that would be the master peg. You could select that, and it would select the whole character. And that's basically a good way of doing the layering. And then with Essentials, you only have the timeline view to do your layering in. In Advanced and Premium, you would have the node view, which was formerly called the network view, and that is a more visual way of organizing your character. And I highly recommend you take a look at that if you get a chance to see how it works. It's pretty useful. One more thing I'll show you, and this is something that is very useful that I use in all the builds that I make, is that this little box right here is a color selector, and it basically changes the color for your layers. In this case, since I've collapsed the head layer, whatever I do to it will change all the layers inside. So in this case, if I select this orange color right here, now all of these are orange. And that's quite helpful when you have a full timeline. If I drag this red bar out to extend my timeline for the entire piece, you can see that all of these, it changes like basically the entire color. It's really easy to see if you're just scrolling through your timeline what belongs to what. I tend to keep it organized colors by side. So let's say for anything on the near side, I would use this bright red. So all of these are the near side. And this way, when I'm just kind of breezing through my timeline, I can see that if I see this bright red, I know it has something to do with the right side of the face. So all of these guys up here, they're all going to show up as red. I don't think I got the ear, though. I didn't get the ear yet. And you can make your own little system. I've got a system of about 10 colors or so that I use to organize how these look. And that's basically it for how to organize your character and put the pieces together.